Sarah, I'd love to ask, and Gabby, of course, about how you guys get into flow yourselves while raising children. And we've got one interestingly specific question from Bobby to kick this off. He says, do you feel like a messy house messes with your ability to get into flow? I fear I waste valuable time cleaning when kids are gone, when maybe I should be using that undistracted time to get into flow and work.
First of all, I love that question because there's so much buried in that. But since this is not an individual therapy session, I won't take the whole question apart. But I would say observe even the need for the orderliness. That is telling you something about yourself. It doesn't mean you have to learn to get into flow in a pigsty. That's not what I'm saying. But there's data there for you about control and order and all these really important psychological tools that tie back to what Stephen was saying about understanding your patterns of sabotage in order to be able to achieve the things that you consciously, which we all know is only 5% of our brain, say you want. With that being said, there's literally no secret. It's all the day in and the day out practices. Stephen and I joke on probably every podcast that the ability to maximize flow in your daily life really starts the night before. It starts with the list. It starts with sleep. It starts with hydration. It starts with nutrition. And then it resumes it happens all while you're asleep. You have a lymphatic system. It works in your brain. It's got all during deep sleep. This all matters. It's not bullshit. Then when you wake up, there's things you can also do to prime yourself. Get sunlight, do a morning movement and breath work practice. So there's just endless opportunities to practice the day in and day out behaviors that prime our brain for that. That's my short/long answer. I like the sauna. I get in my sauna. So, you got to play with it and you have to practice it. And you have to be willing to have frustrating episodes where you can't seem to get that state, and that you're willing to tweak and course correct. Everything is data. Don't take it personal.
I think for me, it's adaptability. You make a lot of plans. We have a lot, like everyone, a lot of things happening. I do need, because I notice everything. I think women notice all the little weird details. Even like if I even say, like I joke, like if I walk in and I'm looking at the floor, I'm looking for dirt on the floor versus if I look up and I see like the light. And so it's also that, we're always trying not to be in fight or flight. Like I joke when I'm wiping my counters down is because I can control this much of the real estate. So I know that. So I notice if I'm off middle a bit, but I do have, this is like practical stuff. We have common areas in our house. So the living room, the kitchen, these areas are common. By the end of each day, I ask my children, make sure these areas are clean again so that I don't have so much visual noise, but also they have their rooms and they have areas that they can do that. But I do believe in keeping a certain amount of order in common spaces so that stuff has to get done, right? And I use, if I'm in my vehicle alone, I use that as a time to check in with myself and oftentimes to do an active meditation because I quite frankly could talk about it, sell it as a part of my business. I have very little time to have like a meditation practice. So you find those places and spaces that I'm by myself, no radio, no phone. I'm driving in my vehicle. I check in. How am I feeling? Do I need to talk to someone? Do I need to clear the decks? Am I off? Have I trained enough? How was my eating? Am I tired? So using these small pockets for active meditation to kind of recalibrate in the middle, I find to be helpful.
So the challenge skills balance, right? Flow's most important trigger, right? For those unfamiliar, we pay the most attention to the present. Thus, we get the most flow when the challenge is slightly harder than our skill set. From the outside, it looks like almost everything a parent does is outside the challenge skills balance. Do you ever get that right? Can you get it right for long stretches of time? I often wonder this. I mean, Joy and I we've been together for 16 years. I think we've been married for 15 years. So I often think this is true in long relationship, in a long marriage as well, that it's really like, it's hard to get that particular thing right. And also,
That's
I don't
interesting.
exactly know what it means in the context of a relationship, right? Clearly, like the challenge skills balance in a relationship is a different thing than in a sport or in business or whatever.
Wait, I'm going to let Dr. Sarah answer the official, but I can tell you as a parent or as a partner or in part of a family, there's moments that you exchange, like, it's a very simple thing. It's a fluid conversation. It's a laugh. It's like a pitch that's harmonious, and and that's kind of it. And if you can pay attention enough to notice it and just be like, oh, there's a harmony in there, and you have those in relationships of all kinds. I think it's really a beautiful thing, and I think we're always all looking for these grand moments. And at the end of the day, really, what you realize is that if you have those a few times a day, you're really that's great.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I've become more and more suspicious of grand moments the older I get. I'm much more interested in the smaller moments and much more suspicious of the grand moments the older I get.
Me too, 100%. I completely agree that it's like, it really is in the details. But I wanted to address something specifically that's sort of an undertone here. When I was in grad school, I remember, I didn't have kids at the time. I remember reading this statistic about attachment. And, attachment for people out there, it's like a real thing that's happening between you and your child. And the way that humans attach is something that psychologists call modeling. And so it's wordless. It's from, by the time they have language, they've already downloaded tons of information that has literally shaped their brain, our brain. And I read this statistic that was incredibly comforting. So that if you can make contact with the ball, so just a base hit, you don't even have to get a grand slam. You mentioned it earlier, Gabby, your daughter's sort of saying something that you maybe think is a little bit of BS, and you decide inside yourself, you're like, you know what, I'm just going to listen to her. That's a win. And if you can do that 30% of the time, the other 70% is repairing. You show your children how to apologize. You show them that being imperfect is built into the human recipe. You show them how to apologize. You show them that you are doing your best, but you don't have an instruction manual. And this is the birthplace of where grit is in the failures, just like in the intrapersonal, right? We learn much more when we fail than when we win. And so it's actually that the ratio is 30 to 70. All you have to have those little moments. If they're 30% of the time, you're a top hitter. And 70% of the time, you're just having an opportunity to model all these other secondary skills that turn out to be critical to adaptation, psychological flexibility. And the big one is the ability to sustain connection and attachment through difficult times. Otherwise, the divorce rate would be 100%. So it's such a great question. I'm so glad it came up.
If what you've heard on Flow Research Collective Radio has been helpful, please consider doing us a solid and leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening to this. Reviews help us connect to a wider audience so we can get these peak performance principles out to more people.